Hello everybody, I'm really ill, so I'm going to try and keep this quite short and brief, but today we're looking at animation in virtual reality. This applies to anything, it doesn't have to be VR, but I've made the template today work within VR, so it'll work really well. Making a complex door opening and closing, controlling when that happens via the animation state machine, triggering that animation by the use of Socket Interactors, because if you've learned today, I love Socket Interactors, detailing the attach transform of the grab interactables. That will make sense when I show you in a second what that is. Use of animation events to play key sound effects, and also having a bit of fun at the end depending on how much time we've got. While we're here, let's do a recap of setting up a VR project where you are right now. If you haven't currently logged into Visual Studio, go do that now. The project that we're going to be working on today can be found on the Moodle page rather than the X Drive. So today's project, you'll find it on the Moodle page towards the bottom under tutorials. What we're looking at today is the Vault VR. That's a zip file, so give that a download. When you click on that, that will take you to this location here, the SharePoint location, and you can download it up there. That will take a few moments to download, and then just go back to our cheat sheet as to what we need. Then we need to extract the project to the user's your account source repos folder on your C drive of your machine. The reason why I'm asking you to do this while you listen to this bit of the tutorial and while you're setting up the other key events is this will take about 5 minutes to fully extract this fairly large project. So just reminding yourself how to do that extraction process. You can either go into your downloads folder, click on that should now be downloaded, extract to the location I just identified, the C drive, users, your user ID, source and repos, which should exist if you logged into Visual Studio, or you can copy paste the whole zip in there and then extract from there. But that extraction process, like I say, will take about 10 minutes to do, so get that going if you haven't already started that process. While you're waiting on that, you can be running the Oculus.bat fix, which is located on the X drive under Computing and D-Day. Remember, you just need to double click it and run it. Then you can open Oculus on the PC, allowing you to log in. Then you can open Unity Hub and log into that. And then you can get physically connecting your headsets and Guardian systems as well. If you are a Quest 2 user, remember you need to choose Allow when you plug the headset into the PC. Allow the link to the to access data from the PC. You also need to click the battery icon in the headset, which will open up the quick settings. Then click on Quest link, then connect it to the PC. Lots of steps. I might print that and stick it on the wall somewhere, but you get the idea. Go do that now. Back to where we are. Once you've got the project open and your headsets are all connected, we're going to be animating a complex door opening and closing. Your project, once it's open, should look a little bit like this. Fallout fans should be familiar with what we've built here. What we have is a atomic bomb. We have a control mechanism, a control unit, a computer terminal, and then we also have a large door, and if I poke my head through the door we have a small tunnel and a set of doors at the back. There's nothing beyond the set of doors, literally just empty space, but for today's tutorial this is going to work perfectly. You'll also notice that outside of the space there's nothing, it's just a space. And for those that have been paying attention, even if you leave the space and look inside, you won't see the outside of the surface, you'll only ever see the inside, because the normals of these faces of those triangles are pointing inwards. So you'll only ever see them if you're looking from the inside out. With the headset on, what should happen is when you press play, this project has been set up in such a way that just like the basic template we used last week, or hopefully you all last week, left thumbstick will allow you to move around, right thumbstick will allow you to snap turn, but right thumbstick will also allow you to teleport and change the orientation of where you will teleport. So hopefully you can see that's changing its rotation based on what I'm doing with the right thumbstick, and when I let go I will teleport to that location. So this is giving you an idea of the two different methods of traversal you might want to use in your game. Smooth locomotion and teleportation, which may be appropriate. You'll also find that someone has left a little key card just by the side of this control panel. And what we're going to have it do is when we go up to this control panel, we'll place it into the socket which has been placed for you, and that door will open. Currently the socket rotates the incorrect direction, and when we hold it, we don't hold the key in the correct direction as well, so I'll show you how to fix that. And we're going to get this door to open and to animate. That's the core of today's lesson. What we want to do is to animate the vault door opening in the style of Fallout 1 and 2. There'll be a link in the description if you want to watch the intros to both of those games, where you can see the vault door opening and closing. But what we're trying to create here is the following type of animation. If we left click on the wall, it'll highlight the scene resources, which is just all of the stuff within this scene. But if I left click into the door again, it will highlight the idea that the door itself is a sub part of this. It's a child of this parent, and it's the door that we want to animate. We've also got a door arm which contains the door grabber, which is this kind of circular bit here. And on the back of the door, what you'll notice is there is like a little circular bit. We're going to try and line this up so the door grabber will hook around that and pull the door to the side. So there's going to be 3 steps to this animation, and I'm going to do this without animating it first, undo it, and then we'll record it properly. So the door is going to go from where it is. It's going to move forward on the blue axis, which is the Z axis. This arm is going to move from there to there, just behind it. There's just enough gap to get it behind, and then both the arm and the door will go this way, but the door will also roll. So I'm going to undo those changes, and we're now going to animate all of those steps. Whenever you want to animate anything, you have to choose which object you want to animate. It's important to notice here I wish to animate the door and the door arm and any parts attached to that. So when you make this animation, you animate the parent of them both. So this is true if you've got an enemy that's got multiple subparts, you animate the parent of the enemy, the top level of the chain. So I could do this in door system, or I could do this in scene resources. For today, I'm going to do it in door system because the animation is not going to affect the computer terminal or boulders or anything like that. If I also wanted a light on the computer terminal to flash as part of this animation, I would put it in the parent of both of them. But just appreciate the way you order your hierarchy is very important. Let me just make sure we are recording. Perfect. I always get paranoid about this far into the tutorial. So what we're going to do to our door system, with that selected, I'm going to go to Window, Animation, and Animation. That's what I wanted, the animation window. By default, this opens its own little window. I'm going to grab the toggle for it, whatever you want to call that. Tab, that's the word. And then I'm going to move that down by the console, which gives you a nice bit of animation space. I'm also going to just minimize this space a little bit more. To begin animating the door system, create an animator and an animation clip. That's what it's telling us to do. Make sure you've got the door system selected. This is really important. You select the correct object, and then we're going to create an animation. It will ask where do we want to create the animation, and it will put it in the assets folder, and we could just put it there loose, but we're going to make a new folder for our animations, and we're going to choose open. We're going to name it, rather than new animation, let's call this door open. Notice I don't have a space in there or anything. It doesn't hugely matter, but again, like any kind of variable, having it be accurate is important later on. So we're going to keep it capital D, capital O, all one word, dooropen.anim, and giving that a save. For anyone who's done any kind of animation before, we've now got a slider bar, very similar to what people may have used before. It looks a bit like YouTube slider bar, to be honest. You know, it's a scrub bar. To record anything, you've got a big red record button over here. But the one thing I want to show you that's really important, by default it will show you 0 seconds to 1. And that can sometimes be misleading. People can think that means 1 minute. That means 1 second. What we're looking at right now is 1 second's worth of animation. So make sure you zoom out and zoom out and zoom out. We want about 10 seconds worth of animation. So I'm just, with my little mouse here, zooming out to about the 10-second mark. It's going to take about 10 seconds for this door to fully open and be at rest. So with the door system selected, I'm going to press record, and now we can start setting things up. At 0 seconds, all of our objects are exactly where we want them to be. Exactly at this state. What I'm going to say though is at the 3-second mark, notice how I've grabbed into this now red bar at the top and I'm moving the scrub bar along to 3 seconds. You can get ultra precise here because it does show you the frame count, so 180 seconds because it defaults to 60 frames per second. 60, 120, 180. So if you want to be ultra precise, pop in 180 there and that will give you exactly the 3-second mark. What we want to say 3 seconds into our animation is this door, which I can now select or click over here because it still knows it's a child. I can still animate it. Oh. I don't know why the animation's turned off while I've done that. There you go. Probably best just to click the door. I don't know why it turned animation off by doing that. So I've gone back to door system, made sure animation is still recording, clicked on door. Easier way of doing it. Going back to the 3-second mark, for some reason I've got to scroll out. Looks like Unity's changed the way it works ever so slightly. So I'm now just going to say at the 3-second mark, the door is going to be pulled forward ever so slightly. Notice where my camera is while I'm doing this. I'm getting myself at a decent little angle so I can see. I'm pulling it out just far enough so there is a gap. And that's where that is. What I also want to have happen at the 3-second mark is I want the door arm, which I'm going to select from the hierarchy, to also be exactly behind it at the 3-second mark. So I'm also going to tell this bar to be over there, keeping in mind I want the scrub bar to be at 3 seconds. So moving. I can't see if that's in the right place from this angle. So I'm going to poke my head around the back, and I want that to be roughly central. Yeah, close enough. So at the 3-second mark, if I now move the scrub bar, those two things should be happening at the same time. That's what we get. Thunk. What we now want to do is that to remain where it is for 1 second. I don't want it to move. This is a big, heavy, weighty door, so I want it to stay where it is. I'm going to drag select both of these keyframes. I'm going to make sure that I'm at a 240 frames, which is the 4-second mark. I'm going to copy with Control C, and then I'm going to press Control and V to paste the same keyframes where the scrub bar currently is at the 4-second mark, which means that it will not do anything between those 2 points. Will stay exactly where it is. Then all I want to say is at the 10-second mark, which is frame 600, obviously 60 frames a second times by 10, 600. Now what we want is the door arm to have moved all the way back, and I want the door to also have moved all the way over, and just making sure that no part of the door is poking through this wall, so I want it roughly there-ish. The problem this will give you is that will look pretty good, but the door is sliding. You get the illusion that the arm is pulling it along the way, but obviously we want this to roll. So at frame 600 again, where we were, so the 10-second mark, we also want this to have rolled 180 degrees around the blue axis, which is the Z axis. You'll also notice up here the transform, it goes red to say this is animated. I could just rotate it clockwise 180 degrees. I could eyeball that, but that's not great. If I hold down Control and did the same thing, it will snap in 15-degree increments to 180 degrees. That's better. It means I can more accurately have it be 180 degrees. And that works. Let me just show you the problem though that we've introduced. The door will rotate and that will look pretty okay, but it will finish animating at the 10-second mark, but start animating at the 0 second mark because it created our keyframe. We didn't put any animation data in, so it assumes 0 is where we want it to start. But I don't want it to start animating the rotation until 4 seconds, until 240. Easy fix. I want to delete the keyframe through door arm rotation. You can see it here, there's a keyframe at 0, but we don't want anything to happen until the 4 second mark. So just grab that keyframe and slide it. And I want it to be at the 4 second mark. There you go. Now nothing will happen to its rotation until we get to 4 seconds, and then it will roll pretty convincingly. So I'm just going to press play to that, and you can see that the door is opening, waiting for a second, and then rolling to the side and looking really rather nice while doing it. It will automatically loop, which perhaps isn't what you want in your game. So, in headset, I'm going to go out of recording mode by pressing the play button. So by pressing the record button, and I don't want it to play anymore. I'm going to take a quick Control and S to save it, and if in game now, if you test it, the door should automatically open as soon as the game starts, and it will automatically loop, which is absolutely not the behaviour you want in game. We want to have that controlled by putting the key card in, and we certainly don't want it looping. That's not right. So what we now want to do is we want to go to the, rather than the animation window, we now want to go to Window, Animation and Animator. This opens up another window, which is the Animation State Machine. So what we can now say that we've done, we've animated a complex door opening, and now we're moving on to the state machine. We'll come back to closing in a second because it's so easy. To find the state machine, we click on the door system, which is where we created the animation. That's where the animation lives. You can also find this with door system. You'll see the animator component is attached to it over here. What this is showing you is that the game loads, we enter into the game, and the first thing we do is open the door. We've got a straight transition, a line between them. That doesn't make sense. We want there to be a pause, we want it to wait, we want it to idle. So right click anywhere in the grey space, create a state, and we're going to create an empty state. This new state is going to be our idle, and we're going to right click and make that layer the default state. Perfect. If I press play now, nothing should happen. I'm not going to pop the headset on, but I am just going to show you while the game is running. If I click on the animator, it's cycling this new state. It's not going into door open, which is exactly the behaviour that we want. If we now want it to be able to go from new state to door open, we can right click on new state and make a transition and click on door open. So it will go from nothing to idle to door open. That will give us the same problem we had a moment ago though, because the problem we had a moment ago was, well, it was going straight here. Now it will go here and then here. But what you can do is put a controller on this transition. We only want this to happen if a condition is met. Notice how we've not written any code. This is all stuff done within Engine. The first thing we want to say with our transition is we would like a parameter that can control it. And the parameter, we're going to click on the plus icon, we're going to create a trigger. This trigger is going to be called open, and this trigger, when it's true, we can now make this happen. So what we can do on the condition, click the plus icon, there's only one condition it can possibly be because there's only one parameter. So if open has happened, then we go this transition. What we do want to say though is with this, keep in mind I've got the line selected, the transition, has exit time. What that means is you've got to wait for this animation to finish playing before it starts opening the door. We don't want that, we want that to be instant. I'm going to go out of play mode, I'm going to turn has exit time off, press play in the game. You can test this in headset if you want to. But now what should happen, I'm going to snap the animator over here, is we're in the new state. And if I were to make this true, and I can do that while the game is running just by ticking the open arrow, that should immediately send the trigger and it should immediately start opening our door, which is the behaviour that we see. It still loops, which is behaviour we don't want. To stop it looping, really simple. Double click on door open and you've got this tick box for loop time, and it's ticked by default. Turn off the tick and it won't loop. Easy as that. Now we need to make our socket interactor, that's the word I was looking for, tell this animation system to fire that trigger. And there are a couple of ways we can do this. I'm going to try it in an easy way, but we'll see. In the computer terminal, you'll see that there is a socket interactor. So if this is all still minimized, open the little arrows and go to the socket interactor. The socket interactor has these interactor events, which we played with last week for those who did the really dispiriting Amazon simulator. And what we want to do is, when it is selected, we want something to happen. Selected in this case means an item is socketed into it. So we're going to click the plus icon, and then it says, which object do you want me to affect when something is socketed into me? Well, the thing we want to affect is the door system, because the door system has the animation on it. And then what do we want to affect? We want to affect the animator, and we want to send some triggers. So we've got this set trigger for int, set trigger for string. Set trigger string is what we want, and then it wants to know the name, the string of text that is the parameter we want to affect. And the parameter we want to affect is called open with a capital E. So I'm going to say open with a capital E, and that will send that pulse to tell the trigger to fire. That will then get the animation hopefully to work. So let me just show you that really again quickly. The socket interactor, let me just undo this so you can see proper quick. Plus icon, drag in the door system into the slot, affect the animator. We want to animate set trigger string, and we are setting the open trigger to send that pulse to the animator. Let's see if that works. I haven't tested this, it could be a disaster. Let's find out. Let's teleport over. I'm going to pick up our very nice Fallout 76 card, and I'm going to socket it in, and bingo. It shouldn't loop. It's also worth pointing out right now, I'm currently in the seated position. If I stand up, you'll see that the vault door is still a decent size, but suddenly that makes a world of difference to the perspective of the player. So you need to decide with your games, is it primarily for standing, which is, this is my standing height, I'm very tall though, versus my seated height. You can see there's quite a significant difference there. I then need to see, can I actually walk through that gap? Yes, I can. I can't teleport in this area because this is not currently set up as a teleport zone. I do want to draw your attention to something that's particularly notable in VR though. I was really lazy when I built these doors. You may notice there's a gap at the bottom. People notice that kind of stuff in VR particularly. So, we've got an animation system. And it works. It's proper good. And we've controlled it through the animation state machine. Let's look at making this closing animation, shall we? The closing animation is so easy. I'm going to go back to our door system where our original animation lives, and all I'm going to do is drag select all of these keyframes. See, that's all I'm doing, drag select all those keyframes. Copy. If I click on the door open thing here, I now want to create a new clip. And let's call this, well, door close. Let's also choose our animations and save it in there. I've got a feeling that our animation didn't actually save in our animations folder. Oh well, easy to move it. Door open, go into animations, easy as that. Also going to put the controller in there as well, that feels tidy. So now we've got our animation controller, door close and door open, which we can edit. So door close, if I now paste in the keyframes and zoom out and zoom out and zoom out and zoom out, those are our exact same keyframes, and that will, if I've got the door system selected, do the same thing. But that's the same properties, right? I just copy pasted opening it so it opens. This is where things get clever. Select all those keyframes. What happens when you select an area of keyframes, you get these blue bars on either side, which allows you to rescale the animation. You see that? I can rescale it to be longer or shorter. What happens though if I grab the starting point and drag it past the end point? It plays in reverse. So if I drag what used to be the end point back to 0, if I drag what is now the end point back to 10, well, it will play in reverse. Ain't that good? So all I've done is just copy paste those keyframes. To now use this in some way, if I go back to the animator, you'll now see that door close is in there as well. We can have door open go to door close. I'm going to make a transition if a condition is met. So let's make a new trigger and let's call this one close. Why not? This happens, we don't want an exit time. This happens when the condition is met, not when open is triggered, but now when close is triggered. So you can also ping pong between these now, can make another transition. That happens when open is true. But what controls this close trigger? Well, let's use our socket interactor again. We've got our key card in there at the minute. If I go back to our socket interactor, there's a key card in there once the door is open. So if we exit from that key card, the key card comes out. Let's tell the door system. I'm now going to tell the animator to set a trigger. Set trigger string, and this is going to be the close trigger. If I look at the animator again, you can see that door open goes to door close if the close trigger fires, whereas close goes back to open if the open trigger fires. And notice we never go back to this new state, so once we're here we just ping pong depending on what we're doing with that key card in the socket interactor. Let's check it and see what's going on. Notice no code has been written. I'm going to pick up a key card. I'm going to put it in there. Interesting. Well, I didn't expect that. Yeah, we want that, but the other way around. I wonder why that's happened. You've probably figured out, like I said, I'm not feeling particularly well at the minute. So we need to make sure that door close doesn't loop, which was my first mistake. Door close double click shouldn't loop. Door open shouldn't loop. If close happens, we close the door. If open happens, we open the door. If open happens, we open the door. Okay, I'm going to test this again with the animator over there, just to see why that happened. I'm also going to check that I haven't been completely daft. Okay, you've probably figured this out before I did. My door open animation closes the door, and I'm guessing door close does it the other way around. Okay, I flipped the wrong one earlier, didn't I? That's my mistake. So door close needs to go the opposite way around. My fault. So all I'm doing here is just flipping the other way around. Don't worry, I'm following the RAD methodology here, rapid improvements. It's all good, it's all fine. So door open really should be opening the door rather than closing it. And you can add a bit of variant, don't have to be exactly 10 seconds, does it? Okay, as always, test it, never trust it. I'm keeping an eye on that state machine though. Never trust a smiling state machine. I'm picking up the card. Card's going in there. Door opens. Promising. And then out, and it closes. There is one thing that genuinely is beyond my ability to solve in this lesson, which is what happens if we take the card out halfway through the animation. Well, I didn't expect that. What? I think that's an exit time issue. But yes, basically what is happening there, you can see that strange loop. What's happening is it's trying to snap to the start point of an animation. You see there, it's because it's returning to the start point of the animation. It doesn't follow a neat blend. Or it's trying to blend between the two, that's what the transition is doing. Which is not really the behaviour that we want. So in this instance, I do actually want has exit time turned on between the both of them. I think that's the right behaviour here, because I want the one animation to finish before the next one starts. So has exit time is turned on in this instance because that makes a lot of sense. Oh, my tea's gone cold. So that's the behaviour. I've got a degree of confidence that will work, but where are we at the moment? We've now got the closing animation. We're triggering that animation using Socket Interactors, and we're doing both of them. And what I'm going to do again is just use this. I'm going to jump to this point. Use of animation events to play sound effects, because I think this is the most important aspect now. There is a sound effect in here under the sounds folder, which I've added for you. Prepare your ears for this beautiful noise. And that is taken from freesounds.org. I think it's a garage door opening. You will notice that this is 8 seconds long, whereas our animation is 10 seconds long. So we may have to rescale this, or we may put this at a time that is appropriate. So what I'm now going to do, the door now wants an audio source. We haven't spent much time looking at audio yet, but I'm just going to give you a quick whistle stop tour. With the door selected, I want to add a component. Audio source is what we want, it's towards the bottom, audio source. And then we want the audio clip to be put in there. So I've got an door open goes in that audio clip. If I press play, that will now happen automatically because play on awake is selected. So this will automatically happen. It's coming out the speakers in the headset, but trust me, it's playing. But I don't want it to play automatically. So I'm going to turn off play on awake. And what I'm also going to do that's really important, the spatial blend doesn't want to be on 2D. It wants to be slid all the way to 3D. If you've got it on 2D, that means it will be the same volume no matter how far away you are, which is daft. Set it to 3D. And also set the maximum range to something like 20 meters. So you can actually see now the sphere is the maximum range of that, and you can click on the icon to change it. I'm also going to change this to linear roll-off. What this basically means is it gets really quiet the further away you are, whereas logarithmic roll-off, which is the default, you'll always end up with it being, you can always hear it no matter how far away, but it will always be quiet. I prefer linear roll-off. So what we're now going to do is set up a trigger, a little bit like what we did earlier, that during the animation this will happen. So within the animations that we've set up so far, door open and door close, we can now create an event. This is the button for creating an event, and I'm going to say about half a second into our door opening, I want this sound effect to start playing. So I'm going to click add an event, and then with this event selected, we can choose the drop downs and do what function we want it to execute. There's currently no option in here because I'm sorry to break the news, this is where we need some code. We do need to write some code and we can have whatever we want happen at this point in an animation. Doesn't have to be sound. If you're making a game where an enemy is hitting you with a sword and you wanted it to do damage to you when it's doing the sword swing, this is how you do it. If you want all kinds of things to happen during an animation event, this is how you set it up. See my Melee part 1 and part 2 video if you want to see how to do that. But what I'm now going to do is write a new script on the door system, and we're going to call this play sounds. This is a new script. Create and add a new script. And because you're in your source and repos folder, we can do a lot of autocomplete. This is when everyone rolls their eyes and go, oh, I didn't put it in my source and repos folder. We do not need anything from line 7 to line 17. All we need is a new publicly visible function that has no return type. It is a void return type. Most of the things we've written so far are void. And then what we also want to do is to have a name that we can access in a second. And we're going to call this like play door open, but I'm going to spell play correctly. Open and close regular brackets, open and close squiggly brackets. And all we want to do is get a component that's on the same object this script is attached to by getting a component, open and close regular brackets. We want to get an audio source because that's what we just attached. Open and close regular brackets, it's that kind of structure, dot play. And play works fine, but play one shot. Do I want one shot? No, I just want play. Open and close regular brackets, end of the line, semicolon to say that you're done. That's all it is. Get the audio source and tell it to play. Give it a save, Control S to save it, and then when you return to your animation tab with your play door open animation, you can click on the event, which is the white icon there, and you should now be able to choose from the drop down the play sound script that you wrote, the methods that you want, and the play door open function we just wrote. So now that sound shouldn't play, hopefully, until we try and open the door. Brilliant, it's doing nothing. Value cannot be null. What? That's not a very helpful error message, is it? Right! Because I'm an idiot, aren't I? Right. We told it to get the component off of this object. However, this object, well, doesn't have that audio source, does it? It doesn't belong to this object, it belongs to the door. There's the audio source. So what I'm going to do is modify this code ever so slightly. Line 6, I would like a public game object. Yeah, let's go with game object, capital G, capital O, and I'm going to call it door anim, and semicolon say that we're done. But instead of getting the component off, or getting the audio source off of this object, we're going to say, oi door anim, get the component off of you. So we're making a chain of references now. So make sure you've got that and given it a save. And now when we return to your door system, it's now got a slot for, well, which door holds the animator? Well, technically, which door has the sound effect, which is on the door. Let's see if that works. You could make your life a little bit easier by just putting this script on the by putting the audio source on the door system, but I'm committed now. Remember as well, you can't turn if you grab something from distance. It's alright. It's okay, I guess. You could do the same for the door closing. It's not a perfect sound effect, and you could obviously find or make more that are more appropriate. For this tutorial, that's all the core stuff I wanted to show you. If you do want to hang around a little bit more though, or you got some time, I now want to show you how you can tidy up some of the key features that are currently a problem. The attach transform currently rotates in a funny way. When you grab this keycard, which is currently hovering, when you grab this keycard, it holds it at a funny angle, and when it sockets in a funny angle. So let's have a look at what that funny angle is and how we can fix that. When we grab it, doesn't matter if you pick it up off the floor or it's there, we're holding the keycard sideways. I think it'd make a lot more sense if I was holding the keycard flat, kind of like that. I think that makes sense because we also want it to go into the keycard that way round, but obviously it's the wrong way round. So let's fix that. We're going to do that with an attach transform. The ID card has a little light on it, which you could animate. Now you know how to if you really wanted to. With the ID card, what you can now do is right click on it and create an empty child. Create empty. This creates a point on it that you can now rotate relative to the object. So what we're going to do here is rotate it around on its Z axis, which is the blue axis, which is currently where we're holding it incorrectly. Going to rotate that minus 90. This will take some figuring out, but it's always a bit of trial and error. With the ID card now selected, the grab interactable, what we're going to change is its attach transform, the point where we grab it by, basically, the attach transform. If I drag that empty game object that we've just put into there, we should now grab it relative to that rotation rather than the rotation of the object. This is really good when you're lining up weapons or items that you want to grab and you want some precision about where you hold it or anything like that. Let's see if that fixed the problem. That looks okay, but now I want it that way round. I think that would look a lot better. I want it 180 degrees around the Y axis now. So that's what I'm going to do. Game object, and I could rotate it 180 degrees there, but I know what I'm doing. I want it 180 degrees around the Y axis. It should now be rotated around That's not what I was expecting. That's more of what I wanted. Maybe it's 180 degrees around the X in this instance. Trial and error, absolutely trial and error. Let's give that a play. Let's see if that's better or worse. Most of your life now it will just be fiddling with attached transforms. Better or worse? Better. That feels okay. Then we've got a socket in there, and because the attached transform has now rotated, the placement will have rotated as well, and that looks so much better. And then as I pull it out, because the way we set that up, it should close the door, but only once it's finished opening it. And the same for if I socket it back in. It'll finish that sequence before it starts the next one. So the next bit is basically a bit of fun. If you've got some spare minutes, let's see what we can now do to make our scene even more interesting. In the intro to the door opening, in the intro to Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, you've got this light up here, and this light spins as part of the door opening animation. And we're going to replicate the same thing. We've got a set of lights, these spotlights, and a capsule and the warning light itself, and we're going to rotate that. We've also got a satisfying beep sound effect that we may find a use to, and we've also got a nice switch sound effect that we might be able to utilise as well. So I'm going to tie in with that switch sound effect really nice and quick. The socket interactor to our terminal. When we select it, we're also going to play the switch sound effect, which you'll notice we can't just drag in because there is no audio source on here yet. So we add an audio source. Because this isn't an event playing in an animation, we don't need to worry about creating a like a sound event for it. We don't need any script for this. All we need is our audio source with our switch sound effect in the audio source. We don't want it to play in a wake. Because it's part of the same object and because it's not happening as part of an animation event, we can really easily just say the audio source, tell the audio source to play. So socket interactors are so great because they require such little coding in many cases. What we also wanted to do is to get this animation to play up here. Now this animation can cause problems. So I'm going to tell the warning light because that is the parent, if you remember. We're going to create a new animation for it, and I'm going to call this, I'm going to move that into the animations folder, light spin. And we do want this to loop maybe every second. So all I've done is 0 to 1 second. I'm going to make it do a full 180 degrees. Oh, sorry, a full 360 I should say. Let's see what this does. See that? A whole lot of not right. So there's some interesting quirks to the animation that you've got here, and that's because the pivot point is off. And I've deliberately done this to show you the challenge. So the central point here is obviously in the centre of all of it, but the pivot point isn't. And the pivot point is obviously what it's rotating around. So there's a couple of fixes to this. The most obvious one is just to move everything relative to the pivot point. So if I move the warning light, you see how its position for things like the cylinders are offset. So I'm going to delete those keyframes, and I'm going to tell the cylinder to have a Y position of 0. That will move it towards the point of origin of the parent. Same for the capsule on the Y, I'm going to move it down. Spotlight, going to move that down. And spotlight 1, going to move that down. That will move it to the point of origin of warning light, where I can move that up. Notice I haven't animated any of that. I haven't had the record button playing, because if I did, it would have recorded all of those things happening. So now back to the 1 second mark, press play, press record, and do a 360, and we've got that playing. What's really interesting now that I wanted to point out is you can see that acceleration and deceleration. We probably want like a constant spin, but you can see acceleration and deceleration. This is to do with curves. So if I go to the curves tab down here, what you'll be able to see is what looks like a horrifying graph. It's not scary, but all the times at GCSE they'll teach you how to use graphs. This is why. What you can see here is on the y-axis, which is what's currently, z-axis, which is currently being animated. You'll see that it builds up slowly, gets faster, and then slows down. That's what that's trying to show you. You can click on that bottom point and grab its little anchor and move that up to like it's pointed to the top, and you can do the same here. Have that so it's kind of pointing downwards. This can be a bit of a battle. And now what we've got is more like a sawtooth effect. It should be a little bit sharper, and you can now see that looks a lot more consistent, because once it gets to 360, well, 360 is the same as 0, and then it will repeat and repeat and repeat with no smoothing of that process. Obviously warning light will play automatically, so we can go back to our animator, create an empty state, set that as the default state, make a transition, create a parameter, and we're going to call this door again. It can be the same name because it's in a different animator. And the trigger happens when door is set, and we don't want a negative time. Excuse me. And then all we need to do is just like we did with our socket interactor, as well as telling the door system to play, we're also going to tell the light to do that as well, the warning light. We're also going to tell its animator to set a trigger string called open to also play. And now there should be two animators that are affected by our socket interactor. Let's see if that's what happens. Well, that didn't work. Why did that not work? Parameter open does not exist. Did I call it door? What did I call you? I called it door. What an idiot. Okay. Back to our socket interactor. I didn't call it open, I called it door. Do you see how you can read the console errors to see what you've done wrong? Or in my case, I've done wrong. Open does not exist. Well, that's true. Open doesn't exist on this thing. You always test, you never trust. Hopefully. There we go. And we got the nice sound effect as well. And that will keep going forever. Two different animations controlled by the same trigger. There we go, and that's closing. If you got this far and you're interested in playing a little bit more, there is an atom bomb over here with a little blinky light on it. It's currently not blinking. Have some fun with that, see what you can get it to do. It is also a physics object if you wanted to make it grabbable. I know, have some fun. That's everything for me, you lot, and hopefully that's been quite useful.